Hello, this is Paul Gore. I'm here today to speak with you about managing royalties for subscription sales. This is part of the discussion about digital transformation in the world of academic publishing and journals. I'm with FADEL, and FADEL has over 17 years of technology leadership in rights and royalty management. FADEL's platforms service customers across the globe with offices worldwide. FADEL's platform is used at the world's largest companies in media, publishing, and consumer products. FADEL's products include full coverage of rights management and royalty accounting. This covers all types of contracts and deals that may be created, all types of royalty payouts, holdbacks, reserves, royalty accounting, the full suite of royalty calculations. In addition, the royalty calculations are tied completely to the rights model. So FADEL's platforms have an extensive rights model that can serve both for royalty statements as well as for the management of the rights that were acquired as part of the royalties. In addition, FADEL uses that information in order to enable rights sales. So those same rights that were acquired from a rights management and royalty accounting perspective are then leveraged in order to sell those rights to licensees who are going to use those rights. In publishing, this may be sub-right type sales or other types of sales of rights themselves. In addition, for education publishers in particular, there is a strong demand to license the rights of all the content that goes into a particular product and not just the product itself. FADEL has a module called Rights and Permissioning, which allows for exactly that. It allows for large-scale setup of rights and rights strategies for what you need for a particular book. And then it manages the acquisition of rights across thousands or tens of thousands of assets that are used within those particular products with a very efficient way for that work to be divided amongst the rights and permissioning teams. This can be used with in-house staff or it can be used with outside providers. And finally, tying it all together from the author perspective is the FADEL platforms include an author portal. Now this portal is going through a major revamp at this point to a multi-tenant platform that will provide a full suite of access and transparency into the royalty statements that are produced by the platforms. And finally, most important, FADEL is committed to the publishing industry. FADEL knows publishing. Some of its earliest clients were in publishing, and the core edition of the IPM Suite platform is built for the publishing workflow. FADEL services 3 of the big 5 publishers in both education and trade, as well as other top 20 publishers around the world. FADEL's team has direct publishing experience. I myself have more than 20 years of experience working at publishers in various roles, mostly as a technology executive, but being involved in literally every part of the publishing business. FADEL is also active contributors to the industry and within the book industry with the Book Industry Study Group, or BISG. Now within BISG, FADEL participates actively on the BISG Rights Committee. FADEL and some of its customers were some of the key contributors to the BISG Rights Management Return on Investment White Paper. FADEL has been contributors of thought leadership and industry content across a variety of webinars, events, panels, published articles. And I've recently been invited to sit on the BISG Board of Directors, and I'm very proud to serve in that capacity. So let me move on to the subscription portion of the program. Subscriptions is really becoming prevalent, not just in publishing, but in most types of business, where the old transaction model is moving to more of a subscription type model. There's some special challenges that occur within publishing when your publishing products are put into a subscription model, and I'm going to bring us through some of those today. Regardless, in 2021, this model has continued its upward trajectory as a top revenue strategy for publishers of all sizes. So with regard to academic and scholarly publishing, this digitization of content is driving change across the industry. Publishers are looking for ways to promote digital study materials amongst students, which has become even more critical in this past year with students working remotely and attending their classes remotely. The general business trends with subscriptions is manifesting throughout publishing as new revenue opportunities for all types of publishers. Now, simultaneous with all this, competition is coming, and the competition is coming from places like online education platforms, other sources of content, including places such as LinkedIn Learning, Udemy, and Coursera, who are all expanding into the education domain, following subscription or subscription platform models. So as you make the entree into subscription, you have to overcome a number of challenges. And the menu of things that you need to overcome or deal with are here. You have to understand what rights you have in order to sell your content as a subscription. It makes perfect, it sounds only too logical that you have to have rights in order to sell them, but it's a step that not all have been as diligent about. The next item is you have to define compensation models to govern how authors are paid. Not every author is paid based on net receipts, and even determining what your net receipts are in a subscription model can be complex. You need to determine how to manage that usage for the subscription projects. What are you going to give the people a right to do? And can you give them the right to do that? Back to the first point. Ultimately, this has to fold into your royalty accounting and your royalty statements so that you can factor this in for proper transparency back to the authors. To the first question, do you own the rights? Now, one of the ways to find this out is that if you already have a system in place, even a royalty system without having a rights system, you can scan those systems to determine what type of transactions are you capable of processing or what type of rights have you recorded so far. Hopefully you don't have to go back to the contracts themselves, but even in that case, you may or may not have the exact same type of rights that you need to leverage in order to make these inclusions in subscription platforms. One of the other key aspects is to look not only at the work itself that's been produced, but also look at the content elements within the work. You need to be sure that you have the rights for all of that together, because you may have to swap out certain content or images or other types of permissioned material if you don't have the right to put that onto a subscription platform. If you do have the rights, it's important to prioritize the opportunities. Focus on high-value content and stay away from where you have legal or compliance constraints. Now, as far as compensation models for subscriptions, they can vary. The basic concept is you have multiple authors contributing to a variety of content that goes onto a subscription platform. It's not like the old days where you're just providing an ebook or certain products that are then rendered onto an electronic platform. You may have content elements themselves, which are then assembled by your platform and provided to your readers or to the consumers of that content. However, from a revenue point of view, the subscription platform typically derives its revenue as a fixed revenue per consumer. You have consumers who are signing up for certain types of access. Perhaps they get access to a library. Perhaps they have unlimited use in some areas. They may have specific restrictions and constraints about how they can use that content. All of that gets built into your subscription platform. But ultimately, those same rules that you use to create your subscription platform are then going to need to drive your royalty payouts. If you have consumers buying content or buying access to content based on all you can eat, then you need to have a way of allocating the monies that are paid by the consumers back to the authors in a fair way. And you need to be transparent in terms of how you convey that to them. Some of these subscription models can be very complex. So first, you can have subscription revenues across various products based on actual usage. That's maybe one of the more simple cases. So I have a fixed fee that the consumer pays. I have 10 products that they can access. I divide up the fee according to how many pages are read, how much time is spent in that. But this gets to the next issue, which is that the definition of usage may vary based on factors such as amount of time spent reading, number of pages read. Did I activate a particular product or set of content, and therefore am now able to access any of that freely? These types of rules can be threshold based. For example, once I read a book more than 20 minutes, it counts as a quantity of 1, or it can be allocated based on the above types of rules. These rules can vary not only by subscription platform, they can also vary potentially by author or by rights holder. So you may have some rights holders who are compensated based on one type of calculation and other rights holders who are compensated on a different type of calculation. And finally, the time that you collect your revenue is typically upfront for access to the platform. However, the royalty payouts and the usage of that content is typically asynchronous. It's not done at the same time. It's done at a later point in time, so that it may take months, even a year, depending on the length of the subscription, before you actually know how the content is being used and how to allocate those revenues. So some best practices that FADEL recommends for subscription processing. First, if you can simplify the rules and simplify the type of processing, that will be much better. It will be much easier to manage. It will be much easier to communicate back to your licensors. However, if you are dealing with a more complex platform, then you need to capture all the relevant usage data points from the subscription platform. You need to correlate the subscription revenue to the types of usage. So you may have a revenue pool that says, I have this type of subscription, all this money comes into this type of subscription, and I have a set of usage which also is related to a type of subscription. That's what we mean by correlating that. It's a high-level correlation. But then what you're also going to need in your internal processing systems, part of your royalty platform, should have a very flexible preprocessor that can allocate the usage to the revenue using rules that are accessible by the business wherever possible. So you don't want to have to call your programmers every time you're going to make a change or every time a new deal is put in place. You want to have those rules accessible and easy to modify by your royalty accounting team. And finally, you want to also incorporate some kind of basic estimation model so that you can do your monthly expense accruals and your P&L accounting. This estimation model is helping to bridge that period of time between when you collect your subscription revenue and when the actual usage is fully known. On top of this, the royalty statements that you send to your authors or content providers will change. Your traditional royalty statements has basic information, how many books were sold, what was the revenue related to those books, what are the rates that we're paying against, perhaps there's tiering, perhaps there's other thresholds built in, ultimately calculating earnings. But you need to consider new variables. If there is subscription revenue rules in place, you need to connect that subscription revenue back to the product sold. You need to display this information with the usage as part of the royalty statements that are coming out. And you need to account for it properly on a single statement so that your royalties for subscription sales are on the same statement that your royalties for non-subscription sales are. This will convey the basic transparency so that you can let your authors know exactly what went into the calculations themselves. Ultimately, it may be advisable to form an author advisory group to solicit the feedback and to make sure that everybody's on the same page. This is going to be a nervous time for your authors. They want to make sure they're being treated fairly. Having transparency and good processes in place will help you do so. So as far as next steps, FADEL does specialize in automating and streamlining rights and royalty management. from one end to the other. And FADEL does have processing for subscription royalties. We're happy to take a call from you. Please don't hesitate to reach out. Contact FADEL for a no obligation assessment on what it will take to manage royalties for subscription sales. Our information is provided here. Thank you very much.